Mr. Chaffetz.
I'll try to frame my question here by also noting that there are two places within this piece of legislation that is very specific to the idea and the notion that if they are on a payment plan in a timely manner, and number two, as another opportunity, if they have a debt with respect to which the collection due process hearing is requested or pending, that employee would not be fired.
Will the gentleman yield?
Sure.
Garnishment is not an agreement under the tax code, nor is it necessarily part of. You don't cover garnishment in your bill.
I use the exact same language from Bill 572 in H.R. 4735. I do recognize and understand.
We wouldn't
that
garnish a contractor. That's why it's not
the
in
language
there.
that is being used. The language that is being used is, I believe, exact. And there are obviously differences in other parts of the bill. And if there are technical changes that need to happen in accordance with that, I'm totally open to it. But to repeatedly state, as if it were fact, that the person would automatically be terminated under this bill, I think is a mischaracterization of what I'm intending to do and of what is literally written in what is a page-and-a-half bill. So my question, which I know I need to get to at some point, has to do with the time that transpires through this process. Some characterizations at the markup were such that the IRS just wakes up one morning, the employee thinks he's good and fine and shows up one day, and next thing you know, not only does he have an IRS problem, but he's also fired from their job. Can you give us, and I recognize the variance in how wide the cases and situations are, but can you give us a general sense of how much time transpires between the first time this taxpayer knows that they've got some sort of issue with the IRS and the final determination as to whether or not that taxpayer is actually delinquent? And I know that's a complicated answer, and we have a very short amount of time, but I'd appreciate you taking a stab at it.
Let me see if I can lay this out. So once the delinquency is established, the balance due, then we begin the notice process that I referenced earlier. So IRS begins a series of 4 contacts with the taxpayer, where we're mailing them the notice saying, here's your balance due, please contact us, we want to work this out, here are your options. From that point in time, from that first notice, time elapses, generally 5 weeks between the notices, where the notices progress to say, please contact us, here's your balance due, we need to talk to you, please work it out with us, all the way through to the 4th notice. The 4th notice is then the point in time where we have exhausted all of the processes and we begin to look for the levy source to begin to do the garnishment. I think it's important to note that a large percentage of taxpayers, whether it's the civilian taxpayer or even a government employee, a large number of folks during that 4-notice process voluntarily come in before we get to a levy or a lien situation and say, let me work out an installment agreement, which that's exactly how we want the process to work.
So that range of time is?
Roughly, I would say 4.5 to 5 months of contact with the taxpayer saying, here's your balance due, please try to get this worked out with us before we go to the levy action.
Okay. And at what point can the IRS file a notice of federal tax lien?
At the point in time, and I'll give you the simplest scenario, when we get to the end of the 4 notices and we look at the balance due, in the case of the federal workforce, because we do have a levy source, we immediately go to the 15% levy. If that 15% levy will pay off the balance due before the collection statute expires, we let that full pay. However, if that wage levy is not going to full pay before the collection statute, we have a couple of options. We can pull that 15% levy back and go for a full wage levy. We can begin to levy other bank accounts. If that's not going to satisfy the obligation, then at that point, we could also file a federal tax lien to protect the government's interest.
Do you know off the top of your head how long a period that levy can be in place?
Well, you know,
What it says?
I think a lot of it's dependent on the amount of the deficiency.
Right.
And if we can work that out before the collection statute expires. But if we can see readily that it won't, then we would file the lien.